We're good. We're back.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know if they still make the Shure X2U or if they still sell it. Should you buy it? I recommend buying it only if you really, really need a small USB XLR interface.
Yeah.
And you expect it to last for 6 years. If you're sitting at a desk or you're in any sort of that kind of scenario where you don't really need it to be this small, pay the extra money and get, one of the ones. I was looking at a PreSonus one, this Scarlett Focusrite one, and there's this Motu one. You can Google and you'll see all of them are apparently like A+ devices.
Yeah,
so
it really
we'll
it comes down to what you're using them for. Like I'm a really dedicated PreSonus, but I also set up really complex pipelines using their software. Scott doesn't need any of that crap.
The PreSonus one looked great. I ordered the Focusrite one because it was way smaller. Not Shure X2U small.
Yeah.
But
because my audio interface is like wide. It's like a rack mount thing that I got in a little rack down here.
And it was well reviewed, so we'll see. But the Motu one actually looked the nicest. It was just out of stock everywhere. So.
Yeah. But these are the trials and tribulations of like having to record podcasts and make panels and everything remotely during COVID. We'll be doing this for probably at least 6 more months, maybe a year.
So here I am using the panel setup for this show because I don't have any other way to use this microphone other than this setup.
Which is good news because we're recording yet another panel soon that you'll be able to see at Super Med Quest.
It's coincidence. I had to set up this anyway, so why not?
Yeah. So, in some actual anime news, you probably know if you've listened to Geek Nights at all, though I don't think I've mentioned this show in a long time. It doesn't really come up in casual conversation, but probably one of my favorite anime in all of my life is Irresponsible Captain Tyler. I'm just
an anime that only old anime nerds like us even know exists.
I found out about it before it even got released in the US. I was like into it.
I found out about it at Anime Club.
I watched a fan sub of the first episode and I was like really excited. I bought like the VHSs as it came out. It took a long time to come out, but I didn't see the end of it. As much as I loved the show, I couldn't get past like the first 7 or 8 episodes, I want to say. This was like in high school. And then we got to RIT. Eventually, at some point, I realized, wait, I could just watch the rest of that show that I liked. It's all in the Anime Club library, and we watched it all eventually.
And a movie, too.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of OAV episodes and all this stuff. There's a newer version of it, like a series 2.
Maybe I'll give it a rewatch, I think. It's because I basically remember almost nothing. I remember the core concept and an alien girl.
It's definitely in my top 10 of anime I've liked in my entire life. Hard to get. It disappeared from streaming sites, I want to say, a while ago. Like, I have DVDs of it, and that seems to be the only legit way I could watch it, really. But somehow, this show, like many other shows that have gotten a re-release in recent history, it's getting a collector's Ultra Edition Blu-ray release, meaning I can...
Bright Stuff.
Yep, so meaning I can buy those Blu-rays, rip them, and then get rid of those Blu-rays because I don't want them. But
or wait for someone else to rip them and download.
Yeah, but the point is, this show, if you've never watched it, figure out a way to watch it, even if you're not invested enough to get this like Ultra Collector's Edition. This and Master Keaton are possibly the most underrated anime in Western fandom ever in terms of number of people who have watched them versus how good they actually are. There are better shows.
Right. So Master Keaton is basically really awesome Japanese dude, except he's all humble and acts like he's not that as good as he is, but he's right. So it'd be like, imagine if like Clark Kent didn't transform into Superman. He just like lifted a car occasionally and was like, not so great.
He's a little bit like Keaton's a little bit like Matlock.
A little bit, right. Irresponsible Captain Tyler is a complete doofus, right?
Or is he secretly a brilliant, transcendent being?
Is a complete doofus who messes everything up, but somehow succeeds despite being a doofus. And the whole point is that you can't tell, is he pretending to be a doofus and is a secret genius, or just so lucky that his doofusness manages to succeed despite what he's doing. He just stumbles into success. Right. It's not an Inspector Gadget situation where there's like Penny is actually making the success happen, right? Imagine if Inspector Gadget just succeeded without Penny and Brain being there, right? That's what irresponsible Captain Tyler is.
But it builds and builds and builds, and as funny as it is, like it's primarily a comedy. It also has that thing that we love, like Tank Police has this too, Dominion Tank Police, or Pat Labor, where there's a gang of idiots who are sort of like friends with or working with the main character, and they're just doing their idiot shit in the background all the time. Mm-hmm. I love that in anime.
So that's Captain Tyler's coming back. Yep. So other big news, right? Discotech Media, who is a U.S. anime distribution, publishing, production company. I don't know which one they count as. They often put out the good old animes, right? The licensed rescues, the re-releases, that kind of stuff, right? So like if you told me pick one US anime, distributing publishing company and you can have their library but you can't have any other anime from any other of the US companies, Discotech every time, right? Yeah. So since there's a lack of anime conventions to go to in person, right? What they did is rather than attend an online anime con, they just did their own panel on their own, right? They had some technical difficulties, but they did their own
We have technical difficulties trying to make this stuff happen.
Yeah. They just did their own broadcast to announce all their shit on their own all at once. And you don't need to watch that broadcast because they did a Twitter thread where they went down and broke down everything they announced in the panel. They live tweeted themselves, right? So I just read the Twitter thread to see the live tweets, and I got all the info.
I scrolled down a little bit. I see Rosa Versailles.
There's some hot shit announcements in here, right? Most of them are Booray announcements, but it doesn't matter because even if you don't care about getting plastic discs, like we don't want plastic discs, it means that all of these shows are going to be legally available in high quality or illegally available in high quality from somewhere, right? So Rosa Versailles, which was on Crunchyroll and I don't think is anymore, coming out, Booray, so that will be available again. Hajime no Ippo, right? Awesome show that I don't think people watched. If you want to see a guy punch a bear in the face, right? There you go. People who like the whatever giant robo, there's that like Ginrei side thing, right? They're bringing that back.
Genshiken. I forgot all about Genshiken.
Is that even? I don't even see that on the list.
Oh no! So I'm scrolling through their thread. That is a fan replying to them at the bottom of their thread. Never mind.
Oh, okay. Battle Athletes, a show we completely forgot about, right? Coming back in not HD, right? SD Blu-rays. Big Lupin announcements, right? So they got Lupin the Third Tokyo Crisis. That's one of those Lupin movies. I think it's one of the newer ones. I don't know if I've seen it.
Oh, I forget which one that is.
Right. The probably best new Lupin TV series, the Fujiko Mine, right? Which Funimation had and then ended. They didn't renew it. So here comes Discotech. Just pick it right back up. It'll be available again.
If you fell off the Lupin the Third train, that show, the Fujiko Mine Lupin, basically starts a new era of A+ Lupin.
Yep. What's interesting is that some of these Funimation and other licensed rescue ones they're doing, they purchased the rights to the dub. They're not dubbing it. They're like getting the dub Funimation did and just putting it on there, right?
That's the right way to go. Like you don't need to do a new dub. A lot of these remastered
I assume they're paying Funimation for that, right? In some way, right? But yeah, why not? Big one, Project Echo, right? Which I don't think has been available in the US legally.
I ever saw in my entire life in the 90s after Vampire Hunter D and Robot Carnival.
Yep. Other than that, there's some other ones you could, that we don't care as much about, like Sympho Gear G, Devilman Lady, I guess that's Go Nagai, right?
Yeah.
Submarine Super 99, Genocyber, Ninja Senshi, Topikage, whatever these other shows are. There's a Case Closed in there.
These are all the shows I've seen, but I don't really ever need to see again.
But they announced 15 things at their special Discotech only panel. So big time anime releases coming in the US. Pretty good.
Telling you, we live in a golden age of access to good animation right now. For everything else that's going wrong with the world, we got animation.
Yep.
But anyway, things of the day. What do you got?
So tying right in to my news, right? I mentioned that Discotech is bringing back the Project Echo on Booray. And they bragged during their panel about how, well, sort of bragging, but they're like, listen, Project Echo, we're bringing this back. We can't get the Masters. The Masters are lost to space and time.
Not
right?
uncommon in old anime.
How are we going to release Project Echo on Booray in high quality when the Masters are just not available, right? They're gone. We just can't get them. It's not like no one will sell them to us. It's like no one has them. They're just poof, right? So what they done is they have this device, apparently, that I learned about. It's like a homebrew device. You can buy it or even make one called the Doomsday Duplicator. And what the Doomsday Duplicator is, it looks like an Arduino with two things stacked on top of it. I'm not sure exactly if it is an Arduino or not, but what it does is you get a Laserdisc player, right? And then you attach it to the Laserdisc player in such a way that you bypass most of the hardware that is internal to the Laserdisc player, and you're basically reading the signal from the laser in the Laserdisc player, like directly. And you're recording it out to a real modern computer and saving that signal in a file.
Yep,
right?
It's raw RF.
Right. So you're taking this raw RF signal and you manage to, by not running it through all that other Laserdisc hardware and like into a, who knows what kind of device, that signal didn't get interfered with in any analog way, right? It's like you got the digital readout from a laser and you just record it, no analog interference in between, right?
Yep.
And now that it's in a file on a computer, what you do to it is really clever, is rather, it's still an undecoded signal. You can't watch it, right? What you do is you create a Laserdisc player in software. You write software that is a Laserdisc player to then translate that raw read from the laser into video that can be used and then made a Blu-ray out of eventually, right? So they can take the Project Echo Laserdisc that they get from somewhere, right, which I guess they have, and get the best possible reading of that Laserdisc, right?
Now this article doesn't
use that to make Blu-rays.
Doesn't explain this, but as best I will assume, based on my knowledge of RF, what's going on here is the way RF works is it's literally like radio frequency, like the same kind of signals you send over the airs in the old days. And what it does is it encodes both chroma and luma together into one signal, and it's an analog signal. Well, not like like a wave file. Like it almost looks like a wave file in essence. And what you do, if you've ever heard of a comb filter, is you basically use a fancy version of an equalizer to say this part of the signal is the chroma, this part of the signal is the luma, and like split them apart. But to do that in real time with analog signals using analog equipment, these filters are not 100%. There's a lot of room for error. Chroma and luma can kind of bleed into each other, and that wasn't a big deal when you're outputting the signal to a TV. Now,
I also don't know enough about how laser discs work, right?
It's just RF. Like RF is RF.
They just take RF but it's still it's the same as like a CD, right? It's still
the
digital data
there.
That's on the laser disc.
But the data we get off is effectively a raw RF signal.
Isn't it? It's the laser disc is zeros and ones though, right? It's not.
There's more in there that I'm obviously skipping, but what you get, the problem is.
At least I think it is. I could be wrong.
So I can link to a video that actually explains this that will do it much better than me, because my knowledge of this is weakening because RF is not relevant to the modern world except in cases like this.
The point is, this is really cool, right? And it, let me tie my news and my thing of the day together into one item like that. So
as a kid, I remember my uncle had a chip that he was trying to like futz with, and what the chip would do, it was a better comb filter that would better separate luma and chroma. So if you plugged like an Atari into it, you get a crisper signal. But that was a long time ago.
The point is, if you've got a laser disc and you want to read that laser disc out, and you don't want to use your Laserdisc player anymore, and you want to get the best possible quality, you can buy or construct this Doomsday Duplicator, set it up, and it'll be a lot of work, but you'll basically get a perfect rip of your Laserdisc.
Yep. It can't get better quality than the Laserdisc signal, but it can get as good as you could have possibly gotten, better than any Laserdisc player ever could have in the wild.
Yes.
So my thing of the day, I'm not that much of a mountain biker these days. Like I tend to go like twice a year at best. Now I'm not really doing it at all for obvious reasons. But the thing about mountain biking compared to skiing is that I learned to ski from professionals who taught me a lot of techniques, jargon, words for things, theory, etc. But I learned mountain biking by being a dumb kid and somehow surviving, just learning it on my own and watching other people and trying to copy them. This video, which our friend Luke posted in the GeekNights forum recently, is a really good mountain biking video because it's not just awesome mountain bikers shredding down a mountain like a highlights reel. It's super long and super slow, and it's basically two dudes, one of whom's a pro, one of whom is not as good, trying a trail over and over again, analyzing like what they did, and basically explaining the craft and technique of how to approach that trail safely, like how to do it, like when to hit the apex and all the different kinds of things to do using all the jargon mountain bikers do. And I don't see many videos like this for either skiing or mountain biking where basically pros speak in the language of their craft and address the problem and then attack the problem in a long video. Like, this is just really cool to me because I didn't actually know a lot of this jargon, but I think I understand it all because I learned it intuitively. And I wonder what people I try to teach skiing think when I use jargon that I assume they understand that they might not necessarily understand. I thought this was a really fascinating video, and I haven't seen a video like this quite as good and actually interesting as this. Partly because the lines they're taking, like the trails they're working on, are, I believe the technical term for this is fucking insane. These are not trails I would be comfortable doing in most circumstances.
Yeah, on the one hand, when people just speak in their jargon of the pros, right? It's kind of disappointing because it's like, damn, I can't learn from that, right? Yep. I'm still not a pro yet. But on the other hand, I'm always disappointed, especially with like sports interviews. It's like they'll interview some athlete after a game and they'd be like, both teams played hard, right?
Yep,
it's like,
get the pucks in deep.
It's like, but if you go to practice and like we're able to listen to the coach and the players talking to each other, it's like, just talk like that when someone comes to interview you after the game. Be like, oh yeah, on that play I didn't do this and that and this other thing, and this is why I messed up on the wrong defensive whatever. It's like, talk like that, and that will, even if I don't fully understand it and I'm not able to like learn to be you from that, it is much more interesting to listen to and more entertaining and informative than the boring not giving you the information kind of talk, right?
But this video, because it's one person who's way better, like sort of guiding someone through this, you can start to learn and intuit a lot of that jargon because you watch the pro do it and you're like, wow, that looks really easy. Then he explains what he's going to do. Then you watch the other guy do it, and even the non-expert, you're like, wow, he didn't do it as well. What's different? And then the guy starts...
Does he get hurt, though?
No one really gets hurt.
So if no one gets hurt, then I consider that a success, right?
Well,
it's like, who cares?
Like, here's the example. Like, skiing is the same way. I could get down a double black diamond trail without dying many, 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 many years ago. Like, I was able to do that like pretty early on because you can take it real slow and careful and boring, or like scoop down on your butt.
That seems like the way you should always be doing it.
But that's boring. I only do that when I'm like exploring a trail to figure out if I want to like go hard on it or not. Like, learn a trail first, then go take the lift back up, then ski it fast because now I know what to expect. But
how about just don't do that second part? That seems
that second part is all I'm after. That's all I want out of skiing.
Right. So I can do it without dying, but doing it with dying, that's what I'm after. The dying part.
But like, you build that flow state and you learn those skills. And this video just shows like a nice progression of that. And it just really makes me want to get outside and go mountain biking and skiing again instead of being cooped up. Good God. In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book has been The Tale of Hanjo, The Tale of Genji, since forever. And we're not reading...
The first novel in human history ever by anyone.
I'm hoping we just don't have time to read right now. Like, we're actually really busy.
I actually have like an urge to read fantasy novel and a little bit, but it's like every time I go to do it, I don't.
Yep.
And then I'm like, I should read The Tale of Genji. That's what I should be reading. I don't. I do something else. So and then I don't have time.
Maybe in the winter we'll get to it. Otherwise, we're going to be live on Friday, coming up real soon at the Penny Arcade Expo online, live to tape with our brand new panel, Where's the Finish Line? Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific time on the PAX 3 channel in the Goose Theater. And I cannot stress this enough. We will be in the Discord answering questions. When, in the last 15 years at a goddamn convention, have we taken questions from the crowd at a panel? You will not likely get opportunities like this again.
I mean, you could just ask us questions any old time via any other communication mechanism, like a Twitter DM or coming to our Discord or email or our forum, or it's like we're available for questions.
Yeah,
we're just not available for questions at our panel.
I kind of blame
right?
like because we're busy and like I'm dealing with other stuff, and we don't always respond to like when fans interact with us. Like when a lot of you at me and I don't always respond. I'm actively trying to respond
Sometimes,
more.
Depends what you message me with, right?
Yeah.
If you message me with something that's worth a response, or it's like, yeah, then I'm gonna reply. If you just send me like, hey, check this out, here's a link, it's like, all right, okay, you sent me something, maybe I 90% chance I saw it already, maybe I didn't, might be cool, but it's like I'm not gonna say anything. I'm gonna say thanks. Like, okay.
But also, we're hanging out more and more in the GeekNights FRC Discord. We're also hanging out in other places online. We're streaming stuff. We're doing things. Follow us around on the internet and hang out.
Mm-hmm. We're also going to tomorrow record a panel that will be shown at MagWest. It'll be a 30-minute panel. It's a repeat.
5 minutes.
Oh my God. It's a repeat panel of Play Dirty to Win, but it's cut obviously in more than half. So you can just watch the old longer version on YouTube.
Well, the old longer one is going to be better because the old longer one is like, here's the technique to win. Here's a lot of explanation and detail. This one is going to be like, do A, B, C, and D, you will win. And we're not going to give you a lot of the theory and why stuff.
Yep. Now, a convention we will not be appearing at, other than as virtual attendees, is this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, the Game Developers of Color Expo. This full schedule went live today, and let me tell you, that is some kind of schedule. Honestly, PAX Online schedule looks like poop compared to that schedule.
GDOC has always had A+ panel content.
Go right now, because now is the time, right? Right? Put it on. If you don't do it right now, write it on your to-do list right now. That by Friday, go. I think you got to buy a ticket, or
it's
at least
like
get it.
$10.
Right? Get the Game Developer of Color Expo. Go through that schedule. Add that shit to your calendar. Right? It is going to be probably the best online convention.
It is
for game. In terms of an online gaming convention where you want to see panels, right, and learn things, this is going to be like number one by far. So there you go.
So get this. The ticket is $10 by default. However, there is a low income ticket that is $5 if you are really strapped for cash.
Yep. They've always had that. Yep.
I guess I never noticed that.
Event. Yeah, for the in-person events, they've always had a, sort of I'm poor, but I want to go anyway edition.
Yep.
So
this is a fantastic con. It's definitely worth your while. All right, let's get right into it because this movie is fantastic. It just came out. We just watched it. We want to talk about it.
All right. So quick background info, right? So years ago, I don't remember what year and I don't care, the Secret of Kells movie came out and we're like, whoa, a high quality, full length animated motion feature that isn't from Japan or Korea or the United States or France. It's Irish. It's like I've never seen an Irish animation before, let alone an Irish animation that is a full-length movie of 90 minutes that is looking so damn good, right? We watched it. We're like, wow, that was terrific. It wasn't perfect, but it was amazing, right? And then a few years go by, they come along with some friggin' Song of the Sea, and we're like, whoa, we didn't think they could do better, but they did. Somehow they did, right? Meanwhile, while they were working on those two things, they did some other stuff, right? Those two were directed by Tom Moore, but they had like Nora Toomey. It had all these people. They did some Puff and Rock. They did some Breadwinner. We did an episode on that, I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
Right? Cartoon Saloon, just cranking out the hits, like no misses. We're talking like almost Satoshi Kon. Right, Satoshi Kon level almost, just no misses, right? Even Miyazaki has misses, right? So years ago, right, around the time of Song of the Sea, shortly thereafter, right, we knew the next one they're working on was Wolfwalkers. And based on the teaser imagery we saw, we're like, That's the one.
Oh,
right?
we were into it. We were just like, we're going to see this day one, no matter what.
We didn't think you could beat Song of the Sea, but I can tell right now that's the one. That's it. It's like, you know, they did 1, 2, 3, and the third time is like, boom, the home run, right? Not that the others weren't home runs. Okay, this was the grand slam. So we knew that in advance, right? So comes along a little while ago. I think we talked about this also on the show. Oh, Wolfwalkers is coming real soon. But guess what? Apple TV Plus exclusive. And we're like, no, I don't want to pay for Apple TV Plus. It's $5 a month and you can get a 7-day free trial, but I don't want to have to do that to watch this thing, right? Supposedly, Tom Moore told me himself on Twitter, you'll be able to just buy it on iTunes. So it's because Apple funded the movie, right? So, you know, GeekNights has still licensed the movie in the US, just like, you know, they have for all the past ones.
Yep. So whenever theaters are existing and safe, I'm sure you'll be able to see it in the theater.
If there is a theater that is safe to go to that you can go to, it may be showing there at some point. Also, presumably, they'll release a Booray at some point, right? But in terms of digital, it's going to be Apple exclusive for most of the world for quite some time because Apple paid for most of this movie.
I don't know if it's over yet, but we actually watched it.
It is over in a few days. I think you've got about 4 days left, maybe 3 or 4 days.
Toronto International Film Festival has the premiere of this movie. So if you pay for access to it, you can just stream this movie directly from the Toronto International Film Festival in really, really high quality.
A silver lining of a global pandemic, as if it's really not even much of a lining considering how horrible a pandemic is, obviously, right? But we would not have been able to go to the Toronto International Film Festival had this nothing wrong gone in the world, right? However, because it's online, you can pay 19 Canadian dollars and you'll be able to watch this movie for a 12-hour window, I think, from the time you first press play or if the film festival ends, whichever happens first.
Yeah.
So that is how we saw it, and that is how we are reporting to you on what we saw. We watched the whole movie.
Yep, well, we won't spoil anything, at least for a while. We'll warn before we start spoiling, but... this movie is a 100% must-see. Like, I'm not going to... just go watch it. Don't wait for us to tell you to watch this movie.
We predicted, and we were right what it was going to be, right?
I mean, I'll say it's the best movie Cartoon Saloon's ever put out, possibly.
Yeah, it's up. I think it's tied, I think, maybe with Song of the Sea. A little different. Anyway. Still, I mean, that's like, oh, I'm tied with Song of the Sea.
Though the tricky part is like, I have to go watch Breadwinner again because that movie is real good too.
Oh, that's so good. Oh yeah. So just brief plot summary, right? You're in Ireland,
Kilkenny specifically.
Yep, the place where Cartoon Saloon is located in the real world, and it's the times where the English were coming all up in Ireland's business, right? Irish people weren't too happy on that. And, they're trying to build out the area around the town, civilize it. And obviously the woods are not too happy about it. So you got a little environmental story, right? What was that one? Fern Gully, right? A little bit of Fern Gully.
That is technically an apt comparison. I'm not going to lie.
Not Fern Gully is a piece of shit compared to this movie, but the point stands. There's a little bit of Fern Gully story going on, right?
But this
girl lives in the town. Yeah. They can't clear the woods because there's wolves in the woods and they keep biting people, right? Scaring people off, right? This girl from England and her dad, obviously her mom is who knows where, probably dead. They are living in this town. The dad's job is to hunt the wolves, right? So that they can clear the woods. The girl wants to go on an adventure and hunt wolves with her dad. The dad is like, no, you're going to get eaten by a wolf. That's probably not a good idea. You're really tiny, right? The girl meets, the Wolfwalker, the magic people in the woods, right? And things progress from there, as you would imagine in a children's movie.
Yep, it is beautiful. The music is good. The story is good. It's pretty... It's actually kind of like the situation is more complex than Scott described because remember, this was during like the Oliver Cromwell area. And if you know anything about how that government interacted with the island of Ireland, then you can see why the Lord Protector is the villain of this movie. But there's an interesting dynamic. On one hand, the two main, the father and the daughter who have moved to Ireland, they're English. The English are colonizers and subjugators of Ireland, but simultaneously, the townspeople are also themselves sort of colonizers and quote, I'm using this as a pejorative word in this case. I want to be very clear. Civilizers of the previously existing populations. And there's the dynamic of the townspeople are sort of against the previous people, the wolves, but also against the English. The English are like, everybody's against everybody. And it's sort of a complex situation. And even still, the father and the daughter have clearly come to Ireland to start a new life or to escape something. Like, they are there, not necessarily by choice, but that's the life they have. Like, they got their hustle. They got to survive.
The girl is obviously happier in England, right? Yep. She's not happy about coming here, right? So she's also, the dad was coming, for his own reasons, right? But the girl is trying to, find a way to, either get back to England, which she doesn't try at that, right? Yeah. But to find a new life for herself and, find a way to enjoy, her situation, right? Instead of, getting stuck, being unhappy.
But simultaneously, she wants to be like her dad. So she wants to be a wolf hunter just like her dad. And she goes out into the woods to like hunt the wolves and kill the wolves. And she meets a wolf and turns out the wolves are pretty cool. And there we go. Here's a movie.
Yep. So this movie does have the common kids movie trope of the adult that won't listen to the kid, right? Which is understandable because she's trying to tell her dad that like fairy tales are real, and he's like, yeah, whatever. Right? It's like, right, this is serious. You're gonna get bitten. No, don't go out in the woods, right? But it's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, if you had just listened to me, right, this would have been all sorted. So that's a little bit frustrating, right? Because as a movie watcher, it's like, it's weird. And now on the one hand, you're like, just listen to the kid. But on the other hand, you're like, wait a minute. If the kid was coming up and telling me that, I'd be like, yeah. Because obviously in the real world, fairy tales aren't real, but I know they're real only because I'm watching a movie. Right.
Yep. But what I will say, because I want to talk about the movie in depth, which requires spoilers, and I cannot stress enough, just go see this movie. But the movie has a very satisfying arc, and it moves pretty quick. Like it doesn't.
That is one thing I've noticed between this one and their previous ones, is that I felt like, not that the pacing in Secret of Kells or Song of the Sea was bad or wrong in any way necessarily, but it was definitely sort of a little slower, had a little bit more breathing room in there during certain parts of the narrative. Whereas Wolfwalkers, I don't think has any breathing room. It's like it's only 90 minutes, which is normal movie length, right? But these days, a lot of movies are going 2 hours. Mm-hmm. But in those 90 minutes, they pack it in tight, but it doesn't feel rushed at any point, right? It's like they figured out the exact saturation point of, how much they could cram into every, second of animation. And they're like, okay, that's how much we're going to do. And they just did it at that pace throughout the whole thing. And it just keeps moving. And it moves, and then it's over.
It moves past where a movie that followed the tropes of this kind of story likely would. That's one thing I will say.
It's like you would think, the climax and the ending will be at this point in the story. It's like, nope, it's actually further down the road, right? Because they're moving at a nice clip. They get further. I think if they had, it was, I wonder, is it like, because Apple paid for this, right? And clearly it wouldn't have happened had they or not anyone else done it, right? Netflix could have paid for it, right? But if no one paid, it wasn't happening, right? They needed the money.
It was very hard to get Secret of Kells made. Part of the reason why Secret of Kells kind of just peters out at the end was the difficulty in funding that movie.
Yep. So, Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, basically on that reputation from those is what, convinced someone like an Apple to pay for this, right?
And more importantly, to let Tom Moore and Cartoon Saloon do what they will with the movie. Like, be a little bit ambitious.
So I wonder if there had been less budget constraints, like let's say they just had more money, right? And they didn't have to care, would they have preferred it to be 2 hours and spread it out a little more? But I think actually maybe this is one of those cases where they were actually helped by the constraints on their creativity, right? I think the 90 minutes worked well.
It's actually 100 minutes.
Ooh. 10 more minute. 10 more minute. All right.
So one other thing I'll say before we get into spoiler territory is that the animation is utterly beautiful, but also there's definitely a form as function situation in this movie where the way it's animated, and we also attended the Annecy Film Festival online where we got to see an explanation of this,
which is
from Cartoon
the reason
Saloon.
we know this. They told it to us.
But it's apparent when you watch it too. Town scenes and forest scenes are animated in fairly radically different styles, and both are animated in the way you might expect Cartoon Saloon movies in this sort of triptych or trilogy to be animated. That combined, visual storytelling is huge in this movie. A lot of things are not said out loud. You figure them out because you see it.
Or just feel it. You can't, even if you can't directly pick it out. It's like if someone says it, you'd be like, oh, that's obvious, right? So for example, when you're in town, or town characters, right, are drawn with straighter lines, right? The Lord Protector is like a box, pretty much, right? And the lines around the characters and around the things in town, or the town objects, right? So a wagon, or, a crossbow, right, are thick, solid, clear lines, and the colors are contained within the lines, right? So everything towny is very rigid and straight, and the color palette for everything in town is very cold, gray, right, blue, There's
also a lot of boxes. Like, characters are often shown, like especially the main girl, behind windows, behind bars, surrounded and boxed in by things. And that even later in the movie, when some soldiers leave the town, it was a very interesting stylistic choice, because when they go out into the woods to do a thing, they put on helmets that basically put a grid over their own faces as they go out into the woods.
They make a lot of good use in the movie of the portcullis in the town. I love a good portcullis, right? There's a great scene there's actually a few scenes where they show the portcullis from a direct side view, like a cross section. And there's characters on the left on the town side, and characters on the right on the outside the town side. And so the contrast is split right down the middle of the frame precisely. There's that. Obviously, out in the woods, the colors are a completely different palette. Green, brown, red, very warm.
Lines
right?
are
and
a little soft. Like, character's hair is fuzzy.
Yep. All the coloring in the lot doesn't stay in the lines. Like, the color will sort of go outside the lines a bit. The lines will be thinner and sketchier, more like with a pencil than with a pen. Everything is hella curvy and round. Everything is round outside the town, right? Curves and roundness, no straight lines anywhere. The trees and everything are really hyper exaggerated, right? Like, they're not realistic, but good enough, right? It's a tree, and you just get a completely different feeling in both places. And you can see the main character, right, is as she becomes, less towny, you'll see they draw her, right? It's her colors are coming outside her lines, right? As she's a little bit less towny. And you see that transition happens visually as well as narratively. Right?
And I think we want to spoil some things beyond this point, because I actually want to talk about specific moments and scenes in the movie.
It's a kids' movie. It's hard to talk about too much without spoiling, right?
Yeah.
So.
But I cannot stress again, don't wait for us. Just go see this movie. Go into it without knowing anything more about it that we've already said.
I'm expecting you to be listening to this, not because you need someone to tell you whether it's good or not before you see it, but because you've already seen it and you just want to vicariously hear people talk about it and go, yeah.
Yep.
That's the purpose of this podcast, right? So if you're hearing my voice now and you haven't seen the movie, what's wrong with you?
So, spoilers. The one thing that I was actually surprised by was that both parents survive. I was so ready for at least one, if not both of them, to not make it. And the movie really, really set me up for that.
I was 100% sure that the dad was going to die and 50% on the mom. And then it's and they really dragged that mom survives question out quite a bit, right? Mm-hmm. And then the dad one, I was like, whoa, oh, you go, okay. It's wow, I didn't see him. All right. I was 100% sure he was going down. And
especially because very early in the movie, you have that scene where, he's setting the traps, and the girl almost steps in the trap.
Chekhov's bear trap.
Oh my God. But after you see those traps, throughout the entire film, the camera will cut to shots of people's feet walking and running briefly. And every time I almost wince, like, is this going to be Chekhov's trap? I was actually pretty sure that either the mom, the dad, or Oliver Cromwell were going to die in a trap, or that one of the two girls was going to get caught in a trap and that was going to be a plot point. I'm kind of glad that didn't happen, but that actually really ratcheted up the tension on certain scenes. But at the same time, the movie it wasn't just like a false Chekhov's gun, because there are scenes where Robin is running through the woods and the wolf girl, she like knows about the traps clearly, and the traps are like not a problem for her, but she like
the traps are a plot point, but no one ever I expected someone to get snared in one and to be a big deal, and that never happened.
People get snared in a less horrific trap than the bear trap.
Yes,
but there's a like the girl at one point just throws like casually trips the trap right in front of Robin while she's blindfolded, so she doesn't step into it, which I think was a very subtle way to show how in tune with the forest the wolves are, and how they like the traps are not actually a threat to them. They're not, they're more dangerous to the humans who are laying them than they are to these characters in the context of this film, which sets up the power of the wolves and the Wolfwalkers later on. Like that's the subtle storytelling.
Right. Usually it's like a fern gully, right? The situation is that the humans are so impossibly strong with their guns and their fire, right? That the woods doesn't stand a chance, and the woods has to like rally or, level up somehow to do something or even get away, right? Whereas here, it's like, the wolves are clearly A+ number one. The humans have nothing on them, even with their guns. And there's also so many scenes where they're trying to shoot wolves and they can't hit shit for shit. Yeah. They're like stormtroopers. They're like pew 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 with their shitty muskets, and they can't hit anything. Pistol, no, can't hit any. It's like the wolves just own the humans. They're just better in every way from the start, and they know it. Right?
Well, because the movie definitely has a very clear point of view. Like a lot of movies with this kind of story would try to make a point of, oh, there has to be understanding and like the city and the town coexist, whatever. The movie definitely is saying the forest life is superior. Full stop.
Yep. And also that, the wolves, interestingly enough, they don't want, usually this kind of story, it's like, the wolves want to stop the humans from chopping down the forest, right? It's like, no, actually what's happened here is all the other wolves have left, right? It's like, okay, humans, you can have this one. We'll go to a different one, right? We're going to leave. But because of the situation, right, with the mom, this one pack is still there. And as soon as they rescue the mom and resolve everything, then they leave, right?
And that leads to another like big surprise that I thought was wonderful. And a minor spoiler for Inglourious Bastards if you didn't see it, because it's a similar type of situation, weirdly enough. But the movie actually just has a straight up happy ending. Like, everyone makes it. But the fact that they kill Oliver Cromwell, that does not obviously happen in the real world.
Oliver Cromwell, quotes, right?
He is cast as Simon McBurney as Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell.
Oh, because they never say Oliver Cromwell out loud in the movie, but it's in the credits. You saw it?
The Wikipedia lists the credit as Simon McBurney as Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell.
Okay, because it's like, if you know anything about Oliver Cromwell, you 100% know that's Oliver Cromwell.
Yeah, the genocide and subjugation of Ireland, the puritanical nonsense, like the English as colonizers and oppressors.
But if you're a kid, they don't say the words Oliver Cromwell in the dialogue even one time.
Yep.
So it's sort of like that thing where adults or really smart kids who know history, or maybe Irish kids who have learned this, probably I imagine better than any other kids, right? They would know, right? What's the extra layer, right? That's going on there.
But there's like moment. Yeah, there's the moment where he dies, though, and I want to get back to that because that involves another thing.
I don't think that's how Oliver Cromwell really died.
Yeah, Oliver Cromwell was not bitten by a wolf and dropped into a pit of spikes.
Dang, that's a shame.
Yep, but this movie, the whole time, if you know history, like you're thinking about like the English prevail in many ways in the real world and continue to commit their atrocities, and like the history of Ireland is something you should learn about if you don't know about it. But in Inglourious Bastards, the whole movie is all these people are trying to kill Hitler. And you, watching the movie, think, but I know Hitler like doesn't get assassinated. Where does this movie go wrong? And the end of Inglourious Bastards is, no, this is an alternate timeline. They fucking killed Hitler. Everybody succeeded. This movie, similarly, the happy ending, just the family leaving on their own, off into the woods, clearly happy, clearly free. They've escaped the English. Like, it's an abjectly 100% happy ending. Escaping the city was the right choice for everyone. It's very refreshing to see a movie that has such a strong note to end on like that. Just the scene where the four of them are in the cart. The dad is clearly... I think it's heavily implied that him and the other mom have now formed a relationship of some kind, the way they are interacting.
Yep.
The two girls,
and
too.
Also the two daughters are clearly, it's like it. On the one hand, you usually, when a movie like avoids being explicitly gay when it's trying to be gay, you usually want to call them out for not being, explicit and trying to sort of, work both sides, right, like that. But, these characters are too young, so I think that's kind of okay.
It reads as both a coming-of-age story, an escape from oppression story, and a coming-out story, or an awakening story for these characters. Especially when you watch Robin and her progression, and her, getting curious and interacting with the wolf girl, and changing herself as she realizes things about herself, which gets into the third thing I love about this movie. When a character gets some magic, they just use it. There's like, well, I'm magic now. I'm gonna magic. I hate it when characters get magic and don't use it intelligently in any media.
Or don't use it to the fullest extent of its power.
Yep.
The only way in which there is any holding back on power in this movie is, I think, obviously because it's a children's movie, the wolves in the action scenes, which are really well animated, did not at any point just maul someone, right?
True.
So it's like there were some times where it's like if it wasn't a kid's movie, that wolf could have just tore open that dude's neck with his teeth and that would have been it, right? And they don't do that, but they do everything else, right? So and I just chalk that up to not wanting to show someone's intestines getting right? Don't show goring and mauling of people in a children's movie.
But the movie along these lines,
that's not appropriate.
It set up the rules of magic, partly by explanation, but mostly by, again, visual storytelling. The bite marks, Chekhov's bite mark on the dad.
Yeah, no point was there a scene where someone explains what wolfwalking does, right? I guess there was. It's like
there's a little bit of when we're asleep, we're
very
wolves.
Short one actually. Yeah, she's like, yeah. When I go to sleep, I'm a wolf, and then I wake up in the morning, and that's it.
Yep.
And that's that's all the explanation you get.
And don't bite people or they'll turn into a wolfwalker. But the fact that biting someone turns them into a wolfwalker is used twice. The mom, the dad gets bitten, possibly on purpose. That's part of the movie.
Yep.
And I love that because that sets up the scene at the end with the Lord Protector where he is bitten, the magic is there. It is very clear that the healing magic could have saved him. And he would have become a wolfwalker, and he explicitly chooses death rather than becoming like the wolfwalkers. Fuck him. But
yeah, he's a bad guy.
But I like that he chose his own death. I think they would have saved him. He chose this, which very much sets up the one-note portrayal of that character, and I think the one note of him really fits what this movie is. My only complaint about him, if I have any critique of this movie, there is one thing that happened a few too many times. Cromwell would tell the dad to do something. The dad wouldn't do it. Cromwell would then say, well, you fucked up now. If you fuck up one more time, you're fucked. And then there really wouldn't be that many consequences for him, and that just kept happening over and over and over again.
He eventually made him like a foot soldier instead of a hunter, and then he was still right there, doing the hunting job in the foot soldier costume, basically.
That dialogue of here are consequences, and then they're not really followed up on directly happened a few too many times. I feel like
I think once or twice extra. I agree. Yeah. So the movie does have, I think because it's so speedy and jam-packed, there wasn't a lot of screen time for side characters, right?
Well,
so
we
you
got
look at something
the really good character, the guy in the stocks.
You look at something like an Aladdin, right? And Aladdin gives quite a bit of time to Iago the bird, right? Or Apu the monkey, right, or whatever, right? This doesn't give so much time to anyone other than the four main character, even the mom, right? The mom, the dad, the two girls, and Cromwell. Pretty much no one else is on screen, really, at all.
All the wolves together are almost like one character. All the non-Wolfwalker wolves. They're just like this.
They don't speak.
Yeah, they're just a fluid mass of undifferentiated wolves. I like
the
that,
only other
actually.
Characters are like the scullery maid who talks for like a minute, maybe not even, right? And the old man in the stocks.
Child. Work is prayer.
The old man in the stocks is like the best. He's awesome.
Well, because he's interesting.
But he also doesn't have a lot of time.
This again, the movie really subtly addresses like the cycles of subjugation and oppression, colonizer and colonized, in that he almost represents the villagers. They fear the wolves and want to use the forest to enrich themselves and better their lives. So they are at odds with the wolves. But at the same time, they are also at odds with the English. But the English are at odds with the wolves, and the English, so they're sort of dependent upon each other in this triangle of dependency and animosity and subjugation and oppression. You don't see something that nuanced in a movie like this that often. Usually it's, here are the good guys, here are the bad guys.
Right. Also, visually speaking, right, the old man in the stocks, right, he's, on the one hand, a villager. He's drawn with the solid lines that are colored in, right, on the inside. But his character design is very round. He's got a round, jolly, kind of Santa Claus-ish kind of look and feel to him, right?
Yep.
Even in the stocks, he's like, hey, right?
But I love how he's like, the wolves are scary. But then he's like, yeah, but a wolf saved me, so maybe they're all right. Yeah. And then when the wolves come to fuck up the English, he's like, fucking go wolves, get him.
Yep, exactly. So it's like, because he has that Wolf Woods alliance, that he's drawn with a rounder shape to him. But yeah, there's also a couple other good fun animation bits going on. There was like a funny donkey, right? The bird is awesome.
The sheep, the chaos of sheep was one of my favorite animated scenes, other than running with the wolves.
Chaos of sheep was good. Also, the wolves. Sometimes the wolves are in a swarmy pack, similar to what Miyazaki likes to do.
That was so beautiful.
Like, if you look at Nausicaa and Princess Mononoke are the two biggest examples, but Miyazaki does this a lot, where there'll be like a swarm or a blob of something spirited away when the sprites are all in a big blob, right? Or, the water is crashing around in the inn and stuff like that, right? It's like he does that kind of thing. The wolves will sometimes do that blob movement where the pack is just in a blob, right? But then sometimes they'll all line up rigidly in a grid, right? Especially when they do the healing magic,
tapestry, right? Or illumination, where they're two-dimensional, like they form almost a painting or a scene. You'd watch the movie to see. It's really hard to explain this without some visual aid, but Cartoon Saloon in general with these three movies has used perspective to great effect. And you'll notice it when you watch.
That's the one last thing is there are a lot of common visual tropes they use between all three movies. The one that stands out the most to me is that when they're showing the town from far away, zoomed out, the town is drawn almost cartographically, right? And you'll see this in Secret of Kells. The town is drawn like it's on a map, right? And you'll even see scenes like a little character is walking onto the map, right? And then it'll zoom into the town. In Song of the Sea, right? They'll show the island as two-dimensional from far away, right? Just like a little house on top of a rock, right? And here, when the town is shown from far away, it's like a rectangle, right, of walls filled with little tiny houses, right? And a gate. And then only when they zoom in further do they get away from that sort of style. So it's there's a lot of common things between all three movies, but that's the most visible one, right? It's when they show the town and zoom out, they draw it like it's a map.
Now, and I know, even as I a little while ago said to the effect of critiquing the circular discussion between the punishment of the dad from Cromwell and how he's still there almost went on too many times. At the same time, the dad was dependent upon the Lord Protector for his livelihood. He didn't have even if he had other options, he did not realize it, and he may not have had other options. Even
from the beginning, is clearly not liking the Lord Protector. He's just sort of resigned to the fact that he has to do this. He has no choice.
And this cycle almost turns into will you follow me this far? How about this far? How about this far? And he keeps every step he takes, he has to be more like this oppressor to be in his good graces for his own livelihood. And you see his struggle to break out of that cycle, because attempting to break out of that cycle might just mean him and his daughter die.
Yep. So he finally does break out, right? And it's the scene where he does break out is great, because he's doing all this stuff, right? Trying to just, caring about his livelihood, even though he doesn't like what he has to do, right? Because he wants to protect his daughter, right? And then, right, he's finally actually arguing with his daughter a little bit, and not just ignoring her and saying, shut up. Right. And he's like, I don't want you to end up in a cage. And the movie has had so much cage imagery in it. The portcullises, the gates on the faces of the soldiers, the mom wolf in a cage. It's just in cages all over this movie, right? In the house is a cage, the windows, everything.
That scene is like a bolt of lightning in the movie.
Right. And then she's like, well, I already am in a cage, right? She's like, I'm imprisoned in this house, in this town with walls, right? It's like, the whole the very beginning of the movie is, I want to get out of the house, I want to leave town, and I'm not allowed to, right? And immediately leaves town, right at the start. And that's when the dad realizes, I think, like, oops.
But also the dad, when the dad becomes a wolf too, like, because his daughter, when she says that, like, she is a wolf, and she has basically decided, I am going to live with the wolves regardless of what you do. Like, she has made her choice.
We done. See ya. Town sucks. And there's those kids in town, the bullies, who have a cage as like their toy that they bring with them everywhere, right? The town bully kids.
Yep. Which the allegory of the scene where Robin is trying to protect the wolf girl, just like her dad is trying to protect her, and she basically tricks those kids into locking the wolf girl up in a cage during a pivotal scene. And then that's sort of where she, on one hand, understands where her dad is coming from, and also understands what the right thing to do. Like, that scene is like her character transformation, and then her saying, I was already in a cage, is her like revealing of that and like the final decision.
Yeah, that's the climax of the movie, and right after that is pretty much just resolution, right? Of, okay, everyone's on these sides now, everyone's figured out their shit. But now we're gonna kill the big bag.
I like how when she turns into a wolf, like, that magic is also very, like, the rules of magic are very well, like, she becomes a wolf literally, and the consequences of her literally being a wolf are immediate and direct.
Oh, they also do there's like
the dad goes upstairs and there's a wolf, and he's like, what the fuck? And
my favorite episode of Samurai Jack is the one where there's the three artists. There's no voice. There's no dialogue. There's the three archers on the tower, and Samurai Jack is trying to get up there to go to the well that they're guarding.
I was thinking that the whole time.
Samurai Jack can't beat the archers, right? They're too dangerous. So he ends up like training and closing his eyes and learning to hear the arrows instead of seeing them, which makes no sense because the speed of light is faster than the speed of sound. But ignore that.
Yeah. But like being in tune with his senses.
But the way in that Samurai Jack episode, they do this thing where the screen is black, right? Suggesting to you that Jack has his eyes closed. And then they begin drawing single objects and playing the sounds that go with those objects to illustrate how Jack can't see. He's intentionally blindfolded himself, but he can see the world through hearing, right? As these objects appear, drawn in a different art style. And this movie does the same thing. It's like, you're a wolf now, and they draw everything to suggest to you, this is how the wolf sees the world. Smells are now drawn. It's like they draw the smells.
That is such a beautiful scene.
Any vibrations that go through the floor, they draw them, right? To illustrate and get across the point that, the wolf has these enhanced senses and sees the world this way, and the human sees the world this way, right?
Yep. Which is used to great effect, both for that amazing running with the wolf scene where Robin embraces being a wolf, that's it. She's a wolf now. Well, simultaneously, when the dad becomes a wolf and he starts to experience these things, but without any help or friendship or context, like he doesn't understand what's happening at first.
Yeah, he's just suddenly a wolf. Like, oops, not, I know what's going on.
We, the viewer, understand it because of how Robin experienced it. And it's portrayed so well. Like, our words cannot do it justice. You just have to see it.
All right, so this review was probably, you could have watched most of the movie by now,
right?
But hopefully you have seen it already. And it wasn't just spoiled for you horribly. Not that I care about spoilers, but other people do. So, I have to go eat food now.
Yep, I do too. So I hope you didn't listen to this without watching the movie, but if you did, whatever, just go watch the movie. It's a movie you should see.
Sure.
All right.